that was selected under an RFP that was awarded in 2019 for $60 million less. The library board of trustees voted in 2019 and every year since in the regular process before the capital budget is presented to the county executive. In advance of that, I attended the board of trustees meeting in April where they voted 2.5 weeks after the county executive presented his capital budget to the county council. Everything about this proposed library has been in secret and not following the standard rules. If you already have an RFP that's been developed or been awarded, why are we, as Megan said, having another developer work for a year prior to develop a different library and in a different location with an architect who's not really an architect, who's a furniture designer, who has built several other buildings around the world, mostly for the rich and famous, funding them, and many cost overruns and unfinished projects. I think it's just a bad precedent to set. There's not enough information to the public about this whole process. And it's $60 million that could be spent elsewhere. Many people in this room that know me know that I've been an advocate for the school system for many years. And that is a major issue, is that we have almost 250 portables for children. My younger son went to Howard High School and he had to walk outside to change classes because the hallways were too crowded. And they had the villas at Howard High School also, right? All the portables that are on the basketball court. So what are we doing to our kids with all this? I mean, the library talks about this being a library for the community, and that's where education is they're working with the school system for education. But we have to think about our infrastructure for our kids too. And I won't get into the busing issue. But that's all I have to say.
Sue? Yeah.
Thanks. I'm Sue Hewen. I'm here not with an organization. I'm here for myself. I want to acknowledge that our schools have a lot of needs, and I certainly don't want to say that those don't exist. They do. But I also know that we don't have any public space at the lakefront, none. We don't have any public parking there, and we don't have any public restrooms or porta potties. To me, there's a huge need for public space at the lakefront. If we don't use this space and use this opportunity, it's going to become a 15-story private building, and we won't get that opportunity to get this space back again. So I basically think that the progressive stance would be to support this library, maybe not in the form that it's presented. All of the decisions on what's inside can change and where the funding comes from. All of that can be negotiable, but that land is not going to come back as an opportunity for us to invest in. So I really think that it's an investment in our community. And I would hope that in some fashion that we would take advantage of this opportunity and lock in that land as a public resource.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, as I said at the beginning, if you, this is not just, feel free to come and share your views. It should be, a forum where people feel comfortable to come and share their viewpoints, no matter what it is. So thank you, Sue. Angie.
Thank you. My name's Angie Boyder, and I just want to say, to start off with, that I agree with all of the concerns that are on this list and that the other people have spoken. Okay, is this better? I want to say that I agree with all of the concerns that are on this sheet of paper, the top concerns and the concerns that people have voiced already. And in particular, one that distresses me personally is the way the contracting has been handled. I used to be chief of policy review and control for the contracting office of a major defense agency. And I would have been fired if we had performed this way. But the big reason I'm here, though, is to represent another one of my big interests. I'm a former president of the Friends of the Howard County Library. And I also served 7 years on the Commission on Aging for Howard County. Libraries have a primary function. And the primary function of libraries is to provide, used to be just books, but now information of all sorts. That's what we want to do. That's what we used to brag about. And that is where I feel we've been falling very, very far behind. Why do I mention the Commission on Aging? Because older people, more and more having mobility problems. They don't drive, they don't get out as easily. And I can tell you that our ebook collection stinks. Compared to other libraries around here like Baltimore County, thank heavens, I also have a Baltimore County card. So if we're talking about libraries, I'd say let's forget about all the fancy buildings and be more worried about our services, which could be provided for a fraction of this cost. So I think our priorities are in the wrong place. And I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Thank you, Angie. Alan, your name was written here. You don't want to, okay. Nanette?
Hello, I'm Nanette Schweitzer, and I moved to Columbia in 1974 because we wanted to raise our children in with all the values, the diversity, all the good moral issues. I get nervous when I start talking. Wait a minute. Anyway, Columbia, the education, the schools, the wonderful community, and that was it. It was just such a wonderful community. My children got a wonderful education. But things change, and the values that were so treasured in the early days of Columbia, I don't see them anymore. I see things changing. Things aren't transparent like they used to be. There's not as much community. I know times change, but I was very involved in the education, Howard County education, and it's almost hard for me to speak about this, but I'm going to share with you why I'm so upset about the library. And that is that the proficiency grades in Howard County education have changed so drastically. The last week, COVID, of course, impacted, but it didn't impact as much as you may have thought. But the, trying to pull them up. Okay, I'm trying to hold. The proficiency rates for the economically disadvantaged children in Columbia at the end of 2022 in elementary for math, 12.1%. For middle school, 7.1%. And for high school, 11.8%. That's Howard County. In English, proficiency in the economically disadvantaged. Oh, darn it, I just lost it. Hold on. Anyway, you get the point. 20%, 25%, 39%. And that was for 2022. Our children need our help. The African American, the Latino percentages, proficiency rates, they were also very poor. Anyway, 22% proficiency in elementary for African American, and it just goes on. In 2008, for African American, it was about in the elementary, it was about 84%. That just gives you an idea. And it's very upsetting. We owe it to our children. Rouse started this community to give everyone a chance to bring up people. And I think we're failing as citizens when we don't stand up and speak out, because if we don't speak out, these kids aren't going to get what they need. They're just not. And the TIF money could be used in a lot of good ways in the school system. And I'm sorry, I'm not a good public speaker, but I think you get my point. I think you get my point.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark.
Okay. One of the reasons that Howard County is a popular place to live and that people move here is because of our schools. And we used to have really good schools. We're going down, and we really need more school buildings. We need more school teachers. We need so much. I am in favor of the Meriwether version of the library. We have to move it somewhere, but let's do it with the lower cost and get a good library. This is a good library. Let's get the equivalent in the Meriwether division district and abandon this lakefront business. We need to use the money wisely and then use the TIF revenue for schools.
Dan? Oh, sorry. Before Dan, Hillary O. Oh.
Hi, thank you. Hi, can you hear me okay? Good, Mike, okay, great, thank you. So I'm here with a couple different hats on. First of all, I'm a community member. I'm also a parent of elementary, middle, and high school age children, one of each. And I also teach here in the county. And so before I go any further, I'm also up here as a lover of books and of libraries. My first job as a young kid, I mean, I don't know, 14, whatever, was in my public school library of where I grew up. And then when my kids first went to school, instead of jumping back into education, I ended up just volunteering at the school library. Like, I love libraries. Anyway, that said, this is a little ridiculous. So, and I wrote notes so that I stay on top. All right. So the library that we all know, I mean, we're here, is a great resource in Howard County. It's one of the places that when we have extended family, they want to come to the Miller Library or now the Elk Ridge Library or here at the Central. Like, there are so many great things. Like, the library is a wonderful thing to support. This is not about supporting the library. And with the money, there are other things that I think we all feel like we could spend it wisely, be a little bit more responsible, and take care of what our community really needs. Our libraries are in decent condition. They might not be super sparkly brand new, but we've had two that are recently renovated and are just gorgeous. Some of the who is it? What? No, sorry, I lost track of who said what, but some of the resources that we have at the library could certainly be boosted. And I think that was a great point that was brought up. The buildings themselves are in fairly good condition. And I think we all feel fairly safe being in this room and walking through the library and not being concerned about the building around us. Now, as a teacher, as a parent, I am going to speak about our schools. As an educator, we try our best. As a Howard County educator, I have to believe that the Howard County education system is trying its best for the students and for the community. It's not perfect, nothing is, but the message that we try and give our kids and that we try and show them through our actions is that we are trying to give them the best possible education that we can, with the best possible resources and opportunities that we can provide here. Unfortunately, our schools need the attention a lot more than this brand new building. The buildings themselves are in poor condition. They're overcrowded. They're unable to support the population that we already have, with still more housing being built throughout the county. At our school where I teach, we have 5 portables. And we try our best with the portables. We do what we can. I was a teacher in one of the portables earlier this year, but we had to be moved because of a bug problem. And there are other just environmental concerns for other teachers in other portables across the county. It wasn't a bug problem that was brought on by the county. It wasn't, you know, a reflection of the school itself or the administration or anything. It's just a fact of these portables. They are not meant for people to be spending day in and day out trying to learn when there are bugs flying around them. It's just not, it's not a situation that any of us would want to be in, especially our students. So with the portables as well, there are kids carrying instruments to and from classes. We have the Chromebooks that, you know, we worked so hard to get everybody a Chromebook. And now with inclement weather, you're having students try and keep these Chromebooks nice and dry, going from one section of the building to the other while walking outside. And that at least deserves a little mention up here as well. In terms of doing our best for our kids, teachers routinely spend their own money to provide for the students. We know that that happens in school systems all across America, but it also happens here in Howard County, where we are known across America as not only one of the greater like academic school systems, but financially very stable. I mean, we all have our own financial issues here in Howard County schools, but compared to everywhere, we should be doing well. We shouldn't be having to struggle. This teachers shouldn't have to pay for their school supplies for their kids. Currently, we're in a paper shortage, which it's fine. It's just, you know, it is what it is. So we scrimp and we save and we try and show the students that we're trying to give them our best. But there's, you know, there's a disconnect here when we have a paper shortage and we're trying to show the students that, hey, we make use of what we have. We're trying to do, you know, X, Y, and Z, and this is how we'll make it work. And then to have something like this be presented, it doesn't match up. There are just too many things that need to be fixed before something extra like this can be adopted and can happen. I like that you brought up, who is this for? It's certainly not equitable. It's certainly not for the people who truly could need it or use it. And I, as a teacher, as a parent, as a community member, I don't really know how we can explain to our kids that we are trying to use our resources to the best of our ability and in a responsible way when this is what we're showing them. Especially, they see the things around our schools. They see the parts of the buildings that need to be fixed. They see that they have to walk one way down the hallway because it's so crowded that you cannot have students walking 2 opposite ways in the hallway. They see that there are things that need to be done. And I'm just glad that everybody that showed up is here tonight. I'm glad that the people who are here online are here. I'm hoping that we can get some traction on this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Dan?
Sometimes we do, but you can't have it trying to carry an instrument case and a Chromebook and an umbrella and try to work. It doesn't work. So we've tried.
To those in attending virtually, someone asked a practical question. Do they provide umbrellas for the kids walking from one school trailer to another carrying the Chromebooks? And the question was that sometimes the teachers provide them, but there's no coordinated way to support that in the county. So yeah, thanks. A good point there, Chris. Dan? You're on, Dan.
I didn't really think we were going to get to this part. Yeah, my name is Dan HoCo. I'm a resident. I do know these people who organized it, but I'm just giving my own opinion. In a past life, I was a professor of political science, and lately I've been reading a lot, not just on urban politics, but on development specifically. Not coincidentally with this library project and other things going on. So my snarky comment is that the library ought to be called the Howard Hughes Profits Branch, because that's what this is all about. And let me just say, put it in broader context, why is it about their profit? Because everything they do and what they back is to boost their land value, because that's how they make money. This sort of thing is the latest thing that developers are doing to boost their land value. You go and you get a big famous architect and you get a big showcase building, and then you put it on your property and the land value goes up. And that means their profits go up. That means that they leverage that new land value to get new loans, to buy new property, to do new buildings. And that's their business model, to continually do that over and over, endlessly. It doesn't matter to them if it's unsustainable, if it's environmentally destructive. That's their business model. And that's what this is about. I think, yeah, should I go on? I just had a couple things people were talking about with the schools. There's a difference between having a wealthy county and a county with some wealthy people in it and a wealthy business in it. And until our county government starts to appropriate more public money from the people who can pay, or not people, in this case, Howard Hughes, we're not going to have the kind of wealth we need. And not only are we not getting that proper pay, not only are they not paying their fair share, but we're subsidizing. We're subsidizing them, and just this project is bad enough. But TIF money, as people have noticed, that's public money, okay? Bonds, which is the second category, that's money that we borrow. That's public money that we then have to pay back. And there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. I could go on, but we've done enough. I've done enough. Sorry, other people.
Thanks, Dan. Next we have Joel Horowitz.
Criticize you.
Joel Hurwitz. I happen to be on a Facebook message chat with the ringleaders, but I don't agree with them. I've been telling them for days when they're wrong and they keep repeating the things. I have to correct them tonight. I'm also on the HCCA listserv. I see a number of you there. How many of you are on the listserv? Rest of you should go online and join because you'll get in these deep conversations or arguments sometimes, as Jake can attest. I agree generally with Sue, who spoke at the beginning. When Deb Young was running for election, I had talks with her, and I think we walked down the parking lot and talked about outputting the library at the lakefront. I had to keep convincing her, no, you don't want to put it in the next to Whole Foods where they're putting the medical building. Put it on the parking lot. I came up with a plan in 2017 that I could share if anybody asks for redesigning the lakefront after Howard Hughes came with their plan that I hate and got in an argument with the planning board over because everything's wrong about the 15-story building and the amenity space is perpendicular to the lakefront and the stores were going to be next to the amphitheater and the entrance and the loading dock and everything for the apartments is apparently going to be on the Whole Foods entrance. And I told the planning board, you're out of walls because you're not allowed to put anything on Little Patuxent Parkway. And I compared it to the Metropolitan, which has things on different sides of the building. So I hated it. It was going to block the view of the lakefront forever. And the fireworks, the fact that nobody could sit in the parking lot at the mall in the future and watch fireworks because there'd be a building in the way. Which I've talked to the library. Hopefully they'll plan this so you can go on the roof, you can watch the fireworks. The library, and I was looking for the document this afternoon, planned for an architecturally significant library in the Meriwether district, which, as I told Greg Fitch the other day, how can you put an architecturally significant library in a corner of a development bounded by woods and a BGE right-of-way next to a cul-de-sac? And I told him, who puts a library in next to a cul-de-sac? Should be the center of things. And I was at the Books in Bloom the other day, and my fallback position for the library was to put it where the Juniper apartment building is in the middle of Meriwether, and then you could have a library entrance on both sides. But he didn't listen to that idea either. So I'm not clear what's happened to this RFP that Megan talked about, but the library has been talking for years about this architecturally significant building with housing above it, which I said, how is that going to work? As I said, you can't walk to it from a couple of directions because it's a flyover from the highway. So Hurry began by talking about the $144 million to Howard Hughes, as I told him 2 weeks ago. Howard Hughes is not getting $144 million going to construction and to the workers. And I'll come back to that. I also don't think that the fees that Hughes agreed to for the Downtown Columbia Partnership and the other SEPAs or taxes, they're Howard Hughes's money now. Yes, people who live in the apartments, I guess, are paying it out of their rent, but it's placed on the property owners, which is principally Howard Hughes. The $10 million in state money, I read the bill, and apparently they promised $10 million for next year's budget. Doesn't use the word lakefront, says something to the effect of design, engineering, and build a library complex in Columbia and Howard County, which if you listen to Deb Young at some of the discussions at the work sessions, the idea of putting Toby's with it, because I also find Toby's in the wrong place, the corner where it floods, and nobody talks about how the county is going to be overbuilding parking garages and how you could share the parking spaces for that. So putting it with Toby's would be a complex. I'm not sure who in the General Assembly used the silent word to as complex, not just library, but they used the word complex. All right, the problem is there are a lot of unresolved questions about plan, and Howard Hughes is not, as this says, unilaterally amending the developer rights and responsibilities agreement. That's a problem, because I talked to Greg Fitchett. He's not amending it. And under the law, he has to petition to amend it, because the county doesn't think it needs to be amended. And hopefully maybe the county executive who signed the DRA might be able to answer some of these questions. Because I've been arguing, and if you see the People's Voice, they agree the DRA needs to be amended. Because there are a number of unanswered questions, starting of which is, how much is Howard Hughes getting? Because Greg Fitchett told the council at one work session, he agreed to get reimbursed as developer. Wasn't clear what they were going to do as developer. Then the next work section, it became more clear. And he said he wanted a 5% standard fee. Well, that'd be $7.5 million. Apparently that is 144 million. And that's not being reimbursed at standard fee. So that's not in here. It's presented that they're getting a donation of the lakefront property, but somewhere buried in this is that the place we're standing is now going to go to Howard Hughes in fee simple without putting the covenants the DRA requires before they transferred it again to the Housing Commission for housing. So it's not a donation, it's now a land swap without following the county's rules on transfers of excess property. The DRA says that to be up to 121 units at the Meriwether with the library complex. The head of the Housing Commission told the council the other day that they'd be between 240 and 300. They can't even apparently decide. That violates the DRA because they're stopped at 120. Also, if you don't pay attention to the details of the budget and the work sessions the other day, Banneker Fire Station is no longer having housing and a fire station because the fire department no longer wants the fire station there because it no longer meets their needs and they're tired of waiting for the North Columbia Fire Station. Could you repeat that last part? Why they don't want to? He's wasting, I have to waste my time. The North Columbia Fire Station was supposed to have been built about 3 or 4 years ago to deal with the service on the 108 corridor. And they didn't listen to my idea to put it at the school system until about 3 years after they tried to put it at the Harper Choice Middle School site. So they're tired of waiting, and it's too close to the Meriwether Fire Station as well. And their fire chief told the council that the perfect location is the one undeveloped parcel across from Acre Ridge Village Center on Cedar Lane. So the DRA dealing with that needs to be fixed. There's a set aside for schools in the MOU that I was trying to understand how much of the money is available for that rather than the TIF money. It's very complicated. Maybe the county executive can explain that to us as well. And to criticize Mr. Kittleman, part of the problem I fear is that if we don't get the DRA amended, it's going to be a lot of side agreements that the council and even the public also is not going to be able to see, because the problem I had with the Guilford Park school site was not the DRA that the council decided to get rid of the whole process. It was the contract for sale that loaded up all the agreements ahead of time outside of the public view and had a DRA attached to it rather than a DRA attached to a contract of sale. So I'm trying to get this fixed. They'd like to get it scuttled. And I guess the last big topic is construction costs. Greg Fitchett told the council that it was expensive for the garage because it had to be poured in place. I went and did some Googling the other day and found the 6-story parking garage that was recently built for the hospital in Philadelphia that was cast in precast, which had the engineering of cast in place to support a 15-story hospital. And people were very happy with all that engineering. I went and contacted the company the other day, and while doing so, found out from their website, they built the garages for Howard Hughes already. And talked to one of the salespeople, and he's gonna go back to Howard Hughes, because they already had a discussion apparently about precast. So they could get precast and get this down, because he said he had no idea why it's $38 million, especially because it's only a one-story dugout rather than 67 feet that they had to cart the dirt out. And that's very expensive because you can't get the equipment in and out. So
Let's go. I'll go to the next speaker.
thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel. The longest speaker of the night. So before we go to the next speaker here, we wanted to, Karina Fisher, if she's still on, we can give her. See if she's still. Okay. Yeah, she's still. Okay.
Yeah, Karina, you want to come on and say something? Okay, I'll unmute you. Says you can't unmute yourself.
Okay, I think that worked. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for arranging this meeting in order to give residents a voice and to share information. I want to thank the resident and teacher for highlighting the crisis that we're in from a capital needs perspective of our schools. I advocate on capacity, specifically with the APFO legislation, which, if you can imagine, we had zero capacity controls on our student population in high schools until 4 years ago. Howard was allowed to reach 140% of capacity, and how 15 trailers were allowed to be added to those children's surfaces as far as the grass to be able to attend that. So I really appreciate that. One of the things that really bothers me about this library concept is the absolute lack of transparency. Almost as if Howard Hughes feels entitled to our taxpayers' dollars. The thought that he could, or he, the corporation, Howard Hughes Corporation, could enter into about this avant-garde design from a firm that has not constructed a library with our library president, to then spring it on our county council, who is the guardian of our tax dollars, literally a day before they get the budget, is, as Liz Walsh said, absolutely preposterous. With the vote that's supposed to happen on May 24th, there is no way for this council to fund this project. It's our tax dollars that are paying for it. Call it a TIF and future state funding. It doesn't matter. All of the money is coming from taxpayers. The least we could have is transparency, and the fact that the guardians of our tax dollars get this as a surprise the day before they get the budget is just unconscionable. I cannot even begin to think that this can even happen. The other problem I have with it is not only the capital side, but the operating costs. It is purposely being downplayed. We as taxpayers aren't even being told how much it's going to cost us to run this project once constructed. The only figure that was out there in testimony was when this project was, I don't know, estimated in dollars. It also carried a $600,000 operating costs, but nowhere in the conversation that projected in today's dollars. And nowhere in any of the operating costs has the president of the library system stated the staff that it's going to take to staff this 100,000 square foot new library. I attended a work session. I asked that question specifically twice. It was not, I asked it on the side. And it was basically that we don't know what the operating costs are going to be until we know what size is the library. I find that problematic when you can give us a $90 million capital inflation cost, but yet not present to us as taxpayers how much it's going to cost us to operate that, both from what the library system will need from our operating standpoint with staff, but then from DPW and the county for things like water. And that's really relevant because if you look at this avant-garde plan, it has a rooftop, I don't know what to call it, lawn planting, sides of the staircase are all green. What irrigation systems are we paying for? What light's going to cost us? What is the all the electronics that go into it? There's just so much that is. And from a resident standpoint, I love somebody about the hospitals. We have one hospital county to serve 335,000 residents. We have 6-7 hour waiting times in our ERs. People are going out of county emergency services, and we're paying $94 million for a library that just gets to our county council, and even drum it down to doorstep services. I, as a resident, submitted a click it on the county's online system, See Click Fix, and it was on June 13th of 2019. And I said, because of highways paving our front road over and over and over again and building it up, you're creating flooding in my driveway. That ticket was just solved on May 12th of 2023, 3 days ago, 4 years. When the department came out with highways, they said that per household, they are given $90 per household in Howard County to work with. We are not getting the services, either resident services, the schools, getting the services there, the flooding, less Ellicott City. How about Valley Mead, where they're condemning houses because the flooding system is outdated and it is too expensive for the county to be paying for it. So what happens? They keep building, they keep developing, they go from the old systems and the homes start flooding. So then we as taxpayers pay for them to be raised. That happened in Valley Mead. And then there are just so many needs that are not being met as county to be talking about spending $94 million on a library. If any of you go to Central at quote the busiest times, which is typically around programming, look at how not crowded it is. And then maybe pay attention to the videotapes of the kids that are posting of school buses. And I'm not going to cry, but it's really hard. That there are children traveling on school buses, standing in the aisleways on highways. Now, there are children that get pushed and shoved and bullied every day. They're pushing and shoving each other through the crowded hallways, the one-way hallways. We are in capital failure. This library should be heavily organized. I appreciate you all being here tonight. And please send in your thoughts. And since there are at least 3 council members that are listening, thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Next we have Kat.
Hi, I'm Kat Wee, and just full disclosure, I am co-chair of Our Revolution Howard County. I did testify about this before, but I'm also a librarian and formerly a teacher. So I have 2 master's degrees. I worked 10 years in teaching, mostly middle school. And I've worked 23 years now in a neighboring library system. And if you're doing the math, I started when I was 12. I always used to get joke. But here's my point, $144 million. Yet our kids are going to overcrowded schools with portables. And by the way, I used to teach in one. They're awful. They're not conducive to learning. Half the time we didn't have heat in those portables. Yet we allow our kids to have, like, I would say, I went behind Centennial one day to see how many. I think we counted over 20. We can't afford not to invest in our kids. Literally, we are always complaining, oh, the kids at the mall, the kids are acting up here, the kids are acting up there. Well, maybe you should invest in their education. Stop putting them at overcrowded schools. Stop spending money on ginormous libraries, which, by the way, the bigger the library, the more issues they have. I'm a union steward for Montgomery County Public Libraries, and I can tell you all the incidents that happen are always at the big libraries. And this library is actually bigger than one of our largest libraries. So I wonder, are you going to staff it properly? Are you going to have security? Are you going to have enough programming? Are you going to have money for books? And people always weigh that, you know, oh, should we hire more people or should we get more ebooks? Should we get security guards or should we get more, you know, other books, other materials? You're going to have to weigh that. And then you'll have this gigantic library that doesn't have very many books because, well, we had to get security cameras. We had to get more staff because we don't have enough staff for this library. And it all costs money. In the meantime, the kids are still in overcrowded schools, in jam-packed hallways, and emotionally they're suffering. And then we wonder why they act out. They're in crisis. We need to invest in our children. And that's all I'm going to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Before we go to the next speaker, if you haven't received this handout, we have a few up here. There's a QR code. It seems to work with iPhones. Seems to not work with Android, but we will still send this out through the Eventbrite nonetheless at the end of the event. But if you can use the QR code, if you can scan it, it will automatically load your email, so you can send an email to council mail with these same exact points. So, and you can make edits to it if you want, but it will auto load this to your inbox. So you can do that now even as we speak. Next we have Alan. Yeah, Alan's right.
Good evening. Libraries are memorable for me. I'd get trouble from my mother getting home from school late because she'd say, where were you all this time? Oh, I was at the library. I was in the second grade. In college, coming out of the library, I found out that John F. Kennedy had been shot. That was another memorable experience in my mind. Another one is the law school library in Eugene, Oregon, when I got my first job as being a law clerk for a circuit county judge. And that was a memorable experience also. Coming to Howard County, I tried to talk to people here and I've learned a lot. And one of the concerns that I have is that there's this adequate public housing. And you're supposed to have adequate facilities before you go building more. And in the last month, I've been at the hospital or talked to people who've been at the hospital, and waiting times for people to get into the emergency room has been 11 hours or more. And how can somebody who's having a heart attack get treated adequately in the emergency room? We need to take care of the people that we have here in other ways. There's a big development going in on Shepherd Lane. Where are they going to put it? They're going to put it down at the bottom of the hill. converting 60 acres of agricultural land to impervious surfaces right next to the floodplain. What's that going to do to the Patuxent River, which is already in negative, declining negative circumstances, which affects the crab and the oysters in Chesapeake Bay. Everybody thinks, well, we've got to take care of that. So what's going on? Who is controlling what's happening to every citizen in this county? And one of the things that I can say is you just need to get involved. Everybody here needs to get 10 people who are involved in what's going on and make sure that the big corporations, the people with power, can't get their way by saying, oh, well, we have to do it because of this, or we have to do it because of that, or they slip it in at the last minute and they say, oh, well, they try to put up some really flashy presentation that says, this is going to be really, really good. It's kind of like going to a new car dealer and say, oh, yes, I really want that new car. But what about the roof on my house? What about the driveway? What about the kids going to school? What about all my other expenses? You got to take care of those expenses as the whole instead of looking at some flashy new proposal that looks really, really good. And I love libraries. And this is a beautiful library. It's a fabulous library. Might be even too good for New York City. I don't know. So get involved, take care of things, and look at all of these things and contact the people who are in charge. Let them know your concerns and follow up and get other people involved. And when you go out and talk to 10 other people, get them to talk to 10 other people, because we're going to be in big trouble if we don't take care of things. This society, as was mentioned once before, the big corporations focus on the bottom line. The more money they can get, the more they can cut off a penny off any place is their goal. That's not where it was when I grew up in a small community. My father was a businessman too. He never went against what the citizens were talking about. Never, ever. He was way ahead of his time in doing things for the community that nobody else would do. I don't see that here with corporations or big businesses. It's just more about a concentration in money, and values are more important than money. Thank you very much.
Excellent points, Alan. Our last, so we have 3 more people on the list, and we are at almost 8:30. Okay, so
I expect to speak.
yeah, so next speaker is Drew, and yeah, I mean, anybody who wants to speak, you can speak as long as we have the space. So it's not.
Thank you, Harry. We're not framing this question correctly. We shouldn't look at this as, should we build a really fancy, nice library in Elkridge or in Columbia? What we should do is look at the capital budget and the county budget as a whole and say, are we spending our capital budget? Are we making investments fairly and equitably across the county? I live in Elkridge. Elkridge, the Elkridge Planning District, which is what I'm referring to when I say Elkridge, is 1/6 of the county population. Columbia is about 1/3 of the county population. In the capital budget this year, in Columbia, there's a $140 million library. There's the $60 million cultural center and dinner theater. There's a new transit center, transit hub by the mall, which for the parts of Elkridge that have transit service takes 2 hours in a transfer to get to. There's the Harriet Tubman Cultural Center. There's the refurbishment of Faulkner Ridge Elementary School as a regional pre-K school. There's no comparable investment in pre-K space in Elkridge. We just get more crowded elementary schools. And the $100 million renovation expansion of Oakland Mills High School, which is justified by residential growth in Elkridge and replaced High School 14 in Elkridge in the school system budget, which had been there for 5 years. So that's over $250 million of the capital budget invested in Columbia. in Elkridge at one-sixth of the county and about half the size of Columbia. What do we get? Do we get, half the investment in Columbia? Do we get about $120 million of investment in Elkridge? No. We get $250,000. That's it. It's for renovated bathrooms in our regional parks. That's all. You want to talk about progressive values? Is that progressive to spend all the money in one part of the county and none in others? Think about that. And think about this TIF, where the TIF argument is, well, Howard Hughes is generating all these taxes in downtown Columbia that must be spent in downtown Columbia. Is anybody saying all the taxes paid by Elkridge get spent in Elkridge? Because they're not being. And this is not just a county issue, it's at the state budget as well. In the state budget, I'm in District 12A. Terry Hill sent out an update for the state session this year in 2023. And the state budget provided $40 million of investment into District 12A, where I live, which is half of Central Columbia and half Elkridge. Guess what? All of that $40 million is in Columbia. Zero is in Elkridge. And every year, it's zero in Elkridge. This is wrong. And with all due respect, Carrie, telling me how there's better things that we can do with 1,000 times as much investment that Columbia gets for different Columbia projects doesn't really resonate with me. Where is our fair share? Where is our investment? Why is it only Columbia? This is wrong. This is outrageous. And the people who advocate for these projects at the expense of the rest of us should be ashamed of yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Yes, I think we all want equitable allocation of resources, and that's what we're here for. Next, we have Tony Du.
All right, I just want to keep it short. Look the picture. Here are the libraries in Howard County. All right. If you see the red dot, Howard County is like this. And most library in the center part. And this is the library in the center library here. We're gonna tear this down and build another one in half mile away from here. Tell me why. Like that lady said, library is for information, to read book. I really love library. I come take my kid, I myself come library very often. I come to nearest library to pick out the book, then I go. If this library is far away from me, I'm not gonna come here. If we build that Lakefront library, how many people gonna really use that library? Tell me, which one are you gonna use that library? See, in the room, only 3 hands, okay? Most people not gonna use that library. I'm not gonna use that library because it's far. There is next door one, why I come to that one? Like that lady said, for me, like I need to drive 20 minutes to get a library. The people need to drive 30 minutes in Howard County to get nearest library. We need to get more people access to the books, the information they need. Like that lady said, ebook, everybody can benefit. If we build it like Lakefront, maybe only 1/10 of Howard County population will benefit. Why we build that one? That's number one. Number two, my kid, my 11-year-old kid play hockey. I took him to everywhere play hockey. During the games, we stop by library, find the library, Pennsylvania, Virginia, different states, find a quiet place to read a book and to study. This library, compared to those library, is like a 4-star library. Those are like 2-star libraries, okay? They have no problem. Those libraries, some of them 50 years, almost 100 years old library, they're perfectly fine. Give people the book, the environment to read. That's the core part of the library. Library is for book. is not for fancy building. You don't want to have fancy building but have nothing inside. Nobody read the book and no book inside. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
I'll be doesn't work. Can you hear me?
It's your mask.
Okay, well, I'm safe, I hope. Okay. So I'll be very fast. I just wanted to, I actually went to Books in Bloom Saturday morning, and I heard the first talk about Palaces for the People, and it was very fancy. And I asked the first question when they explained how this is a place for young people and old people and everybody to congregate. And I asked, how are they going to get there? And the answer was, we have this nice parking garage. We're planning on it. And I said, well, if you want students, kids in junior high or middle school or things, you know what I said back. And they said, well, there's going to be a transit center, but it's clear that they had not given it any thought. And also I brought up seniors. And as far as Drew's point, we've talked about this back and forth, and I think he's, got an excellent point. It's unfortunate that the various centers in the county are spread out. But what is remarkable is if you want to have a central library like this, if you are going to do this and you really have plans that there will be school buses that will be coming through the afternoon or something like that, or on weekends that could take young people, people without cars. People have time if they sit on a bus an extra 20 minutes, but it's pathetic that you're talking about 2 hours and he happens to be right. So this is all, I mean, it's a beautiful project, but it's clear really serving the people as an afterthought, and that's just wrong. And
Yeah, come on. So we have, okay, so how much time? Okay. Okay. So yeah, so we'll do we'll have you speak, and then we have one more comment online, and then Alan, and then Dan.
Hi, thanks. My name is Laura Wisely, and I am from Elkridge. And I actually remember the day that I learned about the Howard County Library and the gem that it is. I was working in the pediatric ICU at Hopkins, and it was my first day back from maternity leave after having my first son. This was 15 years ago. And I met a mom who her son was about the same age as my son. However, though, they were living two different lives. Mine was thriving outside, and hers had been living the whole time in the hospital. He had been on life support, and now he was dying. And I met her, and this was her fourth child, but even in all of her despair, she latched on to me and asked me where I lived, and told me about like what it is about being a mother, and then also being part of that I lived in Howard County, and what a gem of a library that I had, and that I can start going like tomorrow. And so the next week I took my 4-month-old son to the little Elkridge Library. And I don't know how many of you are from the eastern part of the county, but I fell in love with our library there. And it's just cinder block, brown, tiny little cinder block library. This is the last one to be renovated, like not the second or third. It was our first renovation when we got the Elkridge Library. But I fell in love with that little space. It wasn't because of how beautiful it looked, but it was the people, and it was that I was able to bring a 4-month-old and start his learning then. So of course, the libraries are near and dear to my heart. 5 years later, I went to my first PTA meeting and learned about that. Wow, we don't have, we've been trying to get a sidewalk. A little Girl Scout was there trying to tell us about how to get sidewalks right outside of our school. So kids could walk to school. We have a lot of communities. As you know, all of the new development comes to Elkridge. We don't have anything for kids to get there. We don't have kids for ways to get kids to school. That sidewalk has still not been built. And he's in high school now. I also, at that year, that he started kindergarten was the year that that Duckett's Lane had opened. They opened with 9, Duckett's Lane Elementary School. They opened with 9 trailers. He was at Elkridge and they had 7 kindergarten classrooms. And even after redistricting and having a brand new school right down the street, we went from 7 kindergarten classes to 6. Through the years, we exploded into almost 1,000 students in that building. As a PTA president now of middle schoolers, we still have a big problem. Drew was right, there is no investment over the years. We have all of these children on that side of the county with nothing to do. We do have our library, very scaled back. We got a brand new fire station. We can no longer have banquets. Our community space was larger in our older space. So you really have to look at what is being built, what is really, and what are the amenities? We now have an increase in crime. We have kids that are getting into trouble around our area because there's nothing for them to do. We don't have community space. This is inequitable. And I feel this is a vanity project. I love the library, but I would rather see more services and what it does best. It is more than just books. And that's what I fell in love with. And I don't think it needs to be overpriced space to do that. We are what makes it up. And so I really need support for the eastern side of the county. And I really need your help, those in the center, to advocate for that. Because we come to you, but you probably don't know what's going on over there because there's nothing for you to come to on our side of the county. But we need you to see our kids. We need you to see where we live and where we're raising our children. They are good children too. And they deserve all of these things, that walkability and to be able to bike and to be able to have a place to go to that they can get to. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll just do an online comment quickly and
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me, Harry?
yes.
Okay, so thanks for letting me make a second comment. This is not how I feel about the library or anything else about the capital crisis that we're in. But as a prior staff member of the county council, I am begging all of you, no matter what your opinion is, how eloquent it's written, or if it's just a simple, I don't agree. If you're here expressing your opinion, that's all that's going to happen with this. There are 54 participants online. I can't see how many are actually physically there, but if any of you have a pen, please write down the county council email, because again, if you just voice your opinion here or online or to your neighbors, it does not count at all. Your voices are not heard in this process. The email that you need to send it to is councilmail@howardcountymd.gov. And the title line could just be Central Library discussion or Central Library. And then in the body of the letter, it can just be a simple sentence or two. It does not have to be paragraphs long. It doesn't have to be anything well thought out. It's just how you feel as a resident, as a taxpayer. Maybe grab some thoughts from the discussion tonight or talk to somebody about it just to vet it out of how you feel. But it is May 15th. This vote will happen on May 24th. Without community voices, believe me, Howard Hughes Corporation is a propaganda machine. The message is everywhere. It's across Meriwether. They have Facebook pages. All of these things are going out, talking about the various, we're going to have speakers, we're going to have this and that. It's all out there. If residents do not start speaking up, your voices will not be heard. So please take a minute tonight after the meeting, take a sentence or two, add a personal thought, and please send it in to the county council. Again, the vote is scheduled for May 24th. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karina. We'll also provide council mail at howardcountymd.gov. And you can either use the points that were, on these flyers. We have a few points listed on these flyers that you can scan the QR code. It will fill out your inbox. Or we will send the same email, the same talking points through Eventbrite to, I think at the top, we had 147 people sign up and attend so far. So that's a lot.
Period. Just to add on what Karina said, they should also send it to all of the county council, it's not just council mail. And I don't know, can we Eventbrite, can we just do all of the emails? We'll send that stuff through Eventbrite.
Al?
Thank you, Hurry. And I just want to thank the organizers. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate that. It's very important. Thought it'd be good to have one Republican talk. And there are some Republicans here. I just want you to know this is a bipartisan issue. And I was here for the 2016 modification of the downtown Columbia plan. And at that time, it was our understanding that the road was going to go through this library. And that's why we had to build a new one. Because the road was going through here. So we're going to build a new one in Meriwether District with housing on top. We thought, everyone said it was a great idea. Have housing with a library. So people can go downstairs and go to a library instead of having to go drive somewhere. And it'd be an area where mixed income. That makes perfect sense to have mixed income around a library. Now it's not. Now it's going to be at the lakefront, taking away all those benefits of being near residential. But I can tell you, transparency is one thing you talked about at the beginning. Folks, that's one of the biggest problems here. And that's why it's got so many of us concerned. I was talking to somebody the other day that said that something squirrely is going on. Well, for me, it's spidey sense. I mean, something's happening if they're not telling you. Why? How can you plan something for a year and not tell everybody? How can you wait and make an announcement when I know county council members didn't even know about it? And you're making an announcement that with the governor and they didn't even know about it. Or at least found out about it the day before at the most. Something's going wrong there. I can tell you when I was county executive, if I had done that, there was a certain person who was on the county council who now is on the third floor or second, he'd be pretty upset. He'd be pretty upset because you need to be open. You don't have to agree. We don't agree. Drew and I, a lot of us don't agree on things, but you have to at least be transparent and talk about it. And then people can make a decision. And then they don't feel like you're doing something behind doors without them knowing what's going on. I also have talked about the cultural center, combining it because they're having a hard time funding that cultural center. Why don't we put them together? I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not just Toby's, it's actually a cultural center, maybe run by the Howard County Arts Council, not Breckin Parks, and having people really put on something really important for Howard County. The current RFP, it was awarded back in November of 2019. And I know someone had recently contacted them and was told it's still viable. So it's not like they've thrown it out, it's still there. So why can't we just go ahead and build it the way we had it? It was bid out. We had local folks bid on it and get it. I think that's something we could do. We could go ahead and continue building what we had before, and it'll be in an area where there's residential folks. I think it'd be a whole lot better. The individual who built, the housing complex that's across from the mall, the high rise that's near, what's the next to, I guess I should tell people. Huh? Yeah, okay, right there, next to the Exxon, across the Exxon. Dug down 6 stories to build their parking for that. 6 stories. I remember going one day, looking down that hole and saying, oh my, it's a long way. $21,000 a parking space. 40 place, okay. But think about it. They're charging 77,000 I saw. And they're not digging down 6 stories. So spidey sense goes off. Something squirrely is going on. What is happening? We need to find out. And clearly, of course, we could spend that money in other areas. There's no question about that. And granted, you never have enough money to spend it for. There's always going to be things we don't have money for. But you don't want to spend outrageous amounts of money on something that doesn't have to be spent. And that the community can get a great library in the Meriwether district. Frankly, nothing against the people who bid back in November. But if this isn't going to be a road through it. Why don't we just keep this one and maybe make sure this is even better? I think it's pretty good right now. So, I mean, that's mostly what I wanted to say. And folks, we just need to be together. We need to work strongly on this, and we need to come together. We were joking about how we need to be able to talk about issues together, and when we agree, we should work together. So let's work together to make sure we get the best library for the best cost with a transparent government and something that can help our kids with the money that we could save from not doing this project. Anyway, thank you all again. Thank you.
I would add and make Howard Hughes pay for it because it's primarily benefiting Howard Hughes. Tearing this down primarily benefits Howard Hughes. We have one last speaker, Dan.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you. I'm going to be really quick because I didn't prepare anything to talk about, but I've listened to most of the testimony today, and I couldn't agree more with Alan's comments. But I must say, I'm Dan Kramer, by the way. I'm president of the Howard County Republican Club. So, and I've got to say, this is a community issue. This is an issue. It doesn't matter what our politics are. We can disagree or agree on a lot of things. But to Alan's comment of the spidey sense, this is just plain wrong. We have priorities in our community. We have schools that aren't being paid for. I heard a figure recently on deferred maintenance on our Howard County public schools is over $1 billion. The estimate I heard was $1.5 billion. This is more kicking stuff down the road, and we're not addressing the needs of our community. Our kids deserve better. Our community deserves better. And frankly, we are all shareholders of this county. And I think we are all in the same boat and on the same page. And this is just unacceptable. So common sense really needs to prevail.
Thank you, Dan. And once again, we'll send out these talking points. I just one more thing. The way that Howard Hughes is framing this is framing it in terms of puppy dogs and apple pie. It's done in such a way that it makes it difficult for people to raise concerns. And this is not about libraries. This is not about amenities. It's about, if Howard Hughes wants this land, they can pay for moving this library somewhere so they can use it if it's going to benefit them, right? Otherwise, we have a good working library. And so do not, I would just implore, do not get trapped into, talking about the virtues or lack thereof of a library. It's not about a library. It's not about apple pie. It's not about puppy dogs. It's about money, and it's about who's benefiting from that money. Let's focus on that.
I want to make one last point before we go, although people can go if they want. But in terms of strategy, how do we actually exert the pressure that we need to exert to potentially stop this project from going through, especially on relatively short notice? And I think it's pretty clear that at least 2 county council members are willing to stand up to Howard Hughes Corporation here, and that is council members Liz Walsh and Deb Young. And there are 2 council members who have made it pretty clear that they're going to support Howard Hughes Corporation's proposal here, and that is Opal Jones and Christiana Rigby. And so all of that is to say, unfortunately, many issues in this county, the swing vote is going to come down to the sole Republican on the county council, David Youngman. And so if there's any single council member who we need to make sure votes the correct way on this, it is Councilmember David Youngman. And so especially to our Republican friends here, please make sure you put some friendly pressure on David Youngman. And on the, yes, friendly or unfriendly. And on these papers that we have here, they have a QR code to automatically send an email to all the council members. So thank you all for showing up tonight. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what.
What was your name?
Trish. I didn't get to talk.
Nice to meet you, Trish.
But I loved what everybody said, and I'm definitely gonna stand behind this and keep up with this and.
Thank you. Where did you teach?
At,
Swanfield, okay. Is that one of the overcrowded schools in the county?
We had trailers, it was awful having our kids have to go out that rain and not having their umbrella.
How many years ago was that?
I was for 17 years.
Okay, but that's, whether it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the point is, the problem still exists today, even all these years later.
They take away. County enrollment now. I did work for us.
Wow, okay. Did you meet Jim Rouse?
Rouse, I think about this. I really think, and right now he's turning over.
That's what I hear that every other week about every Howard Hughes project.
Because I worked with him and I actually, he was a very good boss. Very good, cared about people.
I hear nothing but good things about it. Yeah.
Funny thing is, New York, they actually ran.
Wow, okay.
So
He's got connections all over.
Yes, he does. But he did a good thing.
Yeah,
And I
at
was
least
so,
in Columbia.
nervous when I was asked. I was so nervous what's gonna happen to this county.